boy, how much food stamps did your mama trade to get you in that seat?" The words came out of Preston Kingsley. Ashford the Third, the way a man orders a steak. Casual. Entitled. Loud enough for the whole cabin to hear. Then he tilted his ceramic mug at a 45-degree angle and poured. Not a splash, not a fling. A careful, deliberate, wrist-angled pour of scalding black coffee that crossed the aisle and landed squarely on Elijah Morgan's chest, his silver laptop, and a printed court filing he had been reading 10 seconds earlier. The keyboard hissed. Steam rose off the white cotton of Elijah's shirt in thin, visible ribbons. The screen of the laptop flickered once, twice, and went dark. A businessman 2 rows back laughed an actual laugh, the kind you give at a joke you half heard, and then went back to his phone. A woman in seat 3D gasped once and turned to stare out her window like the Rocky Mountains had personally offended her. Ashford set the empty mug down, brushed his palms together twice, like a man who had just finished a small job around the house. Then he opened his wallet, slow theatrical, the way you choose a tip at a nice restaurant, pulled out a crisp $50 bill, and dropped it onto Elijah's soaked lap. "Here, buy a new shirt. Actually, buy yourself an economy ticket. More your speed, boy. People like you don't belong up here in first. Get to the back where your kind fits." The word boy landed in that cabin like a brick through a window. In row 4, a little white girl, maybe 7 years old, tugged her mother's sleeve and whispered loud enough for the whole cabin to hear. "Mommy, why did that man do that to him?" The mother shushed her, embarrassed. The little girl kept staring over the seat. Preston Ashford didn't know it yet, but he had just picked the one 20-year-old in America whose mother could bury him with a single phone call. Let's rewind 6 hours. Because to understand how a billionaire ends his own life over a cup of coffee at 35,000 feet, you have to see the young man he picked first. You have to see the mother who raised him. And you have to see the one small laminated card in a leather wallet that is about to cost Preston Ashford everything. Before we go back to the beginning, I need you to do 2 quick things for me. First, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. City country doesn't matter. I read every single one, and I want to know who's in this story with me tonight. Second, if you believe every single young person in this country deserves to board an airplane without being called a name, their great-grandfather heard in a Mississippi courtroom, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what this rich man does not know yet about the 20-year-old sitting across the aisle from him is going to end his entire life as he has ever known it inside the next 4 hours. And what you are about to learn about this young man's mother, who has not even picked up her phone yet, is going to change how you look at every stranger you sit next to on an airplane for the rest of your life. You're going to meet a retired scheduler in Tulsa, Oklahoma, who carried a secret for 11 years. You're going to meet a medical sales rep named Marisol Vega, who filmed 90 straight minutes of 4K video from seat 6B and said nothing until she had to. You're going to meet a young officer named Tyler Briggs, who had to read one single line on a laminated card before he understood exactly how bad his next 60 seconds were about to become. But before all of that, you are going to meet Elijah Morgan, 20 years old, Howard University Jr., coming home from visiting his grandparents, dressed exactly the way his mother raised him to dress whenever he travels, because his mother taught him something when he was 12. And she was about to find out on this particular morning that he had actually been listening. Let's rewind. 5:40 in the morning, Denver International Airport. The terminal smelled like burnt espresso and floor wax. The sun had not come up yet. The big windows looking out onto the tarmac were still black, still reflecting the fluorescent lights inside the terminal back at themselves. A 20-year-old kid walked through the early crowd pulling a Navy roller bag. His name was Elijah Morgan. He was 6'1". He had a Howard University hoodie on under a camel wool coat his mother had given him last Christmas the week he turned 20. His shoes were polished. His shirt underneath the hoodie was pressed. His pants were pressed. Everything about him said somebody raised him to travel. He had a phone to his ear. "Yes, Grandma. Yes, I ate. The grits were good. Yes, I'll text Mom when I land. I know. I love you too. Tell Grandpa I'll call him Sunday. He hung up, smiled at nothing, kept walking. Elijah was flying back to Washington, D.C. He had spent a week with his grandparents in Aurora just outside Denver. His grandfather had taken him out to the driving range 3 mornings in a row. His grandmother had made him eat 3 meals a day whether he wanted them or not. His mother had insisted on the visit the way she always insisted on visits to his grandparents because she was the kind of woman who believed that a black boy growing up without his elders was a black boy missing half his instruction manual. In 3 weeks, Elijah was starting a summer clerkship at the American Civil Liberties Union of the National Capital Area. He had applied on his own. He had earned it on his own. His mother had insisted on that too. At gate B42, he pulled out his phone and sent a text. Boarding soon. See you tonight. Love you, Mom. The reply came back almost instantly. Proud of you, baby. Keys are under the planter. Big trial Monday, don't wait up. Love you more. Elijah smiled, slipped the phone back into his pocket. He did not announce who his mother was. He did not need to. He was 20 years old, and he had spent his entire life not announcing who his mother was, because his mother had taught him that the people who mattered would find out, and the people who didn't matter were not entitled to the information. He was dressed the way she had taught him to dress whenever he traveled. Clean white button-up under the hoodie, pressed gray slacks, belt matched the shoes polished the night before. When he was 12, she had looked him in the eye one morning and told him something he had never forgotten. When you fly baby, you dress like you belong everywhere you are going, because you do. He had been dressing that way ever since. In his backpack was a slim silver laptop he had saved for with 2 full summers of lifeguard work at a community pool in southeast D.C. He had refused to let his mother buy it. He had made that clear. She had agreed, smiling the way she always agreed when he put his foot down, and then she had quietly paid his phone bill for a year so he could save faster and never told him. Also in the backpack, a paperback copy of Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson with the corners of about 40 pages turned down, a thin, stapled printout of a public court filing he had pulled from Pacer the night before because he liked to be prepared for the clerkship and he thought it would be good reading on the plane, a leather bifold wallet, a pack of mint gum, a phone charger. Tucked behind his Howard ID in the wallet was a small laminated card. His mother had made it the week he left for college 2 years ago. The printing was her own handwriting, clear and upright, the same handwriting he had seen on birthday cards his entire life. You are calm. You are loved. You belong. He had read that card so many times in 2 years, he did not need to read it anymore. He knew the words the way he knew his own name. At gate B42, the agent called priority boarding. Elijah walked up, scanned his ticket. He had paid the upgrade with miles. That detail mattered to him. He had earned every one of those miles himself with his lifeguard money, and 1 paid internship from his freshman year. He had not asked his mother for a thing. He walked down the jet bridge. The air was cold. The metal floor clanked under his shoes. He reached the cabin door, turned left into first class, and found seat 2A window side. He stowed his bag in the overhead bin, slid his backpack under the seat in front of him, sat down. He pulled out Just Mercy. He pulled out the court filing. He set them both on the tray table, neat squared. He did not notice the caption at the top of the filing. Not really. He had skimmed it last night. United States versus Ashford Capital Holdings. Securities fraud case, D.C. District. He had pulled it because the filing had some interesting Fourth Amendment arguments in it. He had not pulled it for the name. Across the aisle in seat 2C there was already a man sitting, mid-50s, silver hair at the temples slicked back, a charcoal 3-piece suit that had been cut to fit him. Gold watch on his wrist. A Patek Philippe, though Elijah did not recognize the brand, would not have cared if he did. The man was tanned the way men are tanned when they have the time and money to be tanned in February. He had a laptop open on his tray table to a spreadsheet that looked in Elijah's peripheral vision like a funeral. The man looked up when Elijah sat down, and his face did the thing. Elijah had seen that face 1,000 times in 20 years. The small tightening around the mouth, the quick up-and-down scan head-to-toe, shoe-to-shoulder, the flicker of calculation behind the eyes that said, "You don't belong here, and I am trying to figure out how to fix it." Elijah opened his book, started reading, did not look up. The man across the aisle, whose name Elijah did not yet know, was about to spend the next 40 minutes of his life destroying 60 years of it. He did not know that yet either. Nobody in that cabin did. The little white girl in row 4 waved at Elijah over her mother's shoulder. He looked up from his book, caught her eye, waved back, a small smile. She giggled. Her mother glanced back and smiled, a little polite, the kind of smile white mothers give when their child has just been kind to a black stranger, and they want you to know they approve. Elijah went back to his book. The plane began to fill. Flight attendants moved through the aisle. The cabin lights dimmed and came up again. The safety video started on the small screens. Outside the window, the sun was just starting to come up over the Rocky Mountains, turning the snow pink. Elijah Morgan had boarded that airplane with a book, a laptop, a printed court filing, and a laminated card from his mother that he had carried in his wallet for 2 years. Preston Kingsley. Ashford III had boarded with 2 whiskeys already in him and a $1 billion grudge. One of them was going to end his own life in the next 40 minutes. It was not going to be Elijah. The man in 2C waved over the lead flight attendant. She walked up with the kind of smile that had been trained into her at a 2-week new hire seminar in Dallas 17 years ago. Her name tag said Bethany Tran. "Mr. Ashford, what can I get you?" "Bethany, sweetheart." He did not look at her face. He looked somewhere just past her left ear. "Is there another seat available up here this morning? I paid a significant amount for this cabin, and I was not expecting to share it." Bethany glanced briefly across the aisle at Elijah. Elijah was reading his book. He did not look up, but he heard it. Every word. She looked back down at her tablet, scrolled again. "I'm sorry, Mr. Ashford. The cabin is completely full this morning." Ashford leaned back in his leather seat with a theatrical sigh. Loud enough to carry. The kind of sigh a man releases on purpose when he wants a room to hear that he is inconvenienced. Unbelievable. This airline is really going downhill. They will let anyone up here now. He did not say anyone loud. He said it the way a man says something he is trying to make sure you heard without ever admitting he wanted you to hear it. Elijah turned a page, did not look up, did not tighten his jaw. His mother had taught him when he was 12 that arguing with a story somebody else was trying to write about, you gave the story air, gave it oxygen, made it real. His job, she had told him, was never to argue with that story. His job was to keep the receipts. He kept reading. Bethany hesitated for one small, guilty second. Then she smiled a tight, professional smile and said, "I'll be right back with your pre-flight beverage, Mr. Ashford. Macallan. Neat. Double. Sir, it's 6:52 in the morning. Bethany, sweetheart. I did not ask what time it was. I asked for a double Macallan neat." "Yes, sir. Right away." She walked back toward the galley. Her shoulders were just slightly too tight. Preston Ashford finished the double Macallan before the aircraft pushed back from the gate. He ordered a second one before the safety demo was done. Between sips, he made phone calls. Short ones, quick ones, the kind of calls a man makes when he is trying to seem busier than he is. Most of them he answered in a voice just a little too loud for first class. Yeah. No, I'm boarding now. We'll handle it Monday. No, I told you the judge is some woman, some Obama appointee. Nobody from any firm I've ever heard of. We'll paper her to death." Elijah caught the word trial and did not think anything of it. Thousands of trials started every Monday in this country. He had no reason to connect the man across the aisle to anything. Ashford kept going. "It's a witch hunt, Barry. That's what it is. The SEC is trying to make an example. Nobody goes to prison for this. Nobody has ever gone to prison for this. Relax. He hung up, ordered a third Macallan. Bethany glanced at the galley clock. 7:04 in the morning. Mr. Ashford, maybe we switch to coffee. Bethany, when I want your input on my drinking, I will ask for it. Macallan, now. Yes, sir. She brought it. He drank it. By the time the aircraft pushed back from the gate, Preston Ashford had 3 doubles of a very expensive single malt whiskey in his body, a mood that had been bad before he even got on the plane, and a trial Monday morning in a federal courtroom in the District of Columbia, where he was the defendant. He did not know that the judge presiding over that trial had given birth 20 years ago to the young man currently reading Just Mercy across the aisle from him. He would. The plane pushed back. The engines hummed up. The cabin rattled gently down the taxiway. Outside the window, the sun came all the way up and Denver International Airport turned gold. The little girl in row 4 waved at Elijah one more time. He waved back. Small smile. She giggled. 40 minutes into the flight, the cabin settled into that cruising hush where you can hear the ice shift in somebody else's glass. The fasten seatbelt sign had been off for 10 minutes. Bethany had come through with the beverage cart once already. Elijah had asked for water. Ashford had asked for another Macallan and had this time been politely told by Bethany that the captain had requested she slow the service per protocol. Ashford had not liked that. His face had gone a shade of pink that was not from the sun. He had muttered something that Bethany had pretended not to hear, and then he had asked for coffee instead. Black ceramic mug. I am not a toddler, sweetheart. I do not drink out of paper cups. Bethany had poured the coffee. Steam had risen off the surface in thin ribbons. She had set the ceramic mug down on his tray table carefully and moved on down the aisle. That was the mug. That was the mug that was going to end Preston Ashford's life. He did not pick it up right away. He let it sit there for a few minutes. He kept glancing across the aisle at Elijah, who was reading steadily page by page, the way a young man reads when he knows he has 3 more hours in the air and no reason to rush. Each glance lingered a beat longer than the last. Something was building in Preston Ashford. The whiskey, the trial Monday, the Obama appointee judge, the idea sitting under everything that this had all gone wrong for him because the world had stopped knowing its place. And across the aisle in seat 2A was a young black man in a Howard University hoodie reading a book on an airplane in first class, not looking at him. Preston Ashford in that moment made the worst decision of his entire life. He just did not know it yet. The plane hit a small pocket of turbulence. Nothing dramatic. The kind of shudder that barely rattles an ice cube. Elijah reflexively reached out and steadied his laptop with one hand. His elbow stayed firmly on his side of the aisle. His hand did not cross the space between seats. Nothing of his body, his clothes, or his tray table touched Ashford's mug. Ashford's head snapped over like he had been waiting for it. Whoa, 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 young man. Careful there. You almost knocked my drink over. Elijah looked up, genuinely confused. Sir? I didn't... It's fine. It's fine. Ashford held up a hand. Fake friendly smile. Just be more aware of your surroundings, son. A few passengers looked up from their phones. The stage was set. The whole cabin was now an audience for something. They just did not know what yet. Ashford held Elijah's eyes for a long 2 seconds. A small, lopsided smile crept onto his face. The smile of a man who had already decided what happened next. And then he picked up the mug. Elijah's hand moved toward his laptop to shield it. Too late. Preston Ashford tilted the mug. It was not a splash, not a fling. It was the careful, wrist-angled, elbow-steady pour of a man who had been trained his entire life to handle fine china at dinner parties. A slow, deliberate arc of scalding black coffee that crossed 3 feet of aisle and landed exactly where Preston Ashford intended it to land. The coffee hit Elijah's white button-up shirt, first blooming dark brown across his chest like an ink test. It hit the silver laptop next. There was an audible hiss. The screen flickered 2 times, went black. It hit the printed court filing. The pages curled in on themselves at the edges. The ink started to run. The caption at the top, United States versus Ashford Capital Holdings, blurred into a dark smear. It hit his gray slacks, hot through the fabric down onto his thigh. Elijah inhaled once sharp through his teeth. He did not cry out. He did not jump. He did not stand up. He did not throw anything. He just sat there, coffee dripping off his chin, and stared across the aisle at the man who had done it. Preston Ashford set the empty mug down on his tray table, brushed his palms together twice, like a man who had just finished a small job around the house. Then loud and clear, no apology anywhere in it, no whisper, no shame, he said, "Oops, looks like somebody needs a bath. Boy, how much food stamps did your mama trade to get you in that seat? People like you do not belong up here in first class. Get to the back, where your kind fits." The word boy landed in that cabin like a brick through glass. Elijah was 20 years old, 6'1", a grown man by every measure any reasonable person uses. But that word had a 400-year history in this country. And Preston Ashford knew it. And Elijah knew he knew it. His grandfather, David Morgan, had been called boy by a sheriff in Tuscaloosa, Alabama in 1963. He had been 17 years old. He had been carrying groceries home to his mother. His great-grandfather, Ezekiel Morgan, had been called boy in a courtroom in Jackson, Mississippi in 1947. He had been 41 years old. He had been testifying against a white landlord who had cheated him out of a year's rent. Same word, same weapon, new airplane, same country somehow. Ashford was not done. He opened his wallet, slow theatrical the way you pick out a tip at a steakhouse, pulled out a crisp $50 bill, and dropped it onto Elijah's soaked lap. "Here, buy a new shirt. Actually buy yourself an economy ticket. More your speed, son." The businessman 2 rows back laughed. An actual laugh, the kind you would give at a joke you half heard. He glanced up from his phone, saw the scene, laughed once, looked away. Went back to scrolling. The woman in 3D gasped, put a hand over her mouth, and immediately turned her face toward her window. The little girl in row 4 tugged her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, why did that man do that to him?" The mother shushed her, embarrassed. The girl kept staring over the seat. That question almost broke Elijah more than the coffee did. Almost. Bethany Tran came rushing up the aisle with a thick stack of cocktail napkins. And here is the small, ugly detail that the whole cabin was about to remember for the rest of their lives. She did not look at Elijah. She looked at Preston Ashford first. "Mr. Ashford, are you okay? Did any of it get on your suit?" Not a word to Elijah. Not a glance at the 20-year-old sitting across the aisle with steam still rising off his chest and a $50 bill soaking brown into his thigh. "I don't think it got on me," Ashford said, patting his lapel. "No harm done." "I am so sorry, sir." "Let me get you another Bethany, darling. Another Macallan. Please. After all this upset." "Yes, sir." She turned to leave, and in that small moment, that tiny pivot away from a young man who had just been assaulted in front of 29 witnesses, Bethany Tran ended her own career. She did not know it yet. The video was already running. 6 rows back in seat 6B, a woman named Marisol Vega, 34, pharmaceutical sales representative, mother of 2 on her way home to Arlington after a conference in Denver, had her phone up. She had lifted it the second she heard the word boy. She had been recording for 11 seconds before the coffee was even poured. She would record for another 90 minutes without ever once putting the phone down. She did not know Elijah Morgan. She did not know Preston Ashford. She did not know Judge Celeste Morgan. She did not know that the footage currently being captured on her iPhone in crisp, stable 4K was about to become Exhibit 1 at a federal hate crime trial in the District of Columbia. She just knew in that moment, the way all decent people know that something terrible was happening to a kid who had been reading a book and that the flight attendant was wiping off the wrong chest. She kept filming. And across the aisle from Elijah Preston Ashford did the single dumbest thing he did all morning. He pulled out his own phone, held it up, filmed Elijah, laughing while he filmed, posted a 10-second clip to his private Instagram story with the caption, "First class these days." He set his phone face down on the tray table, sipped the Macallan Bethany had just delivered, smiled a small, satisfied smile. He did not know that the Instagram clip he had just posted was going to be Exhibit 4 at his federal trial in 8 months. He did not know that he had just filmed his own confession, with a caption, and delivered it to the prosecution. He also did not know because he had never asked, because he had never cared that the young man currently sitting across from him with coffee dripping off his chin had a mother who was a federal judge. Not any federal judge. His federal judge. The one he was going to be standing in front of at 9 a.m. Monday morning in a courtroom in Washington, D.C., exactly 3 days from now. Elijah Morgan took one slow breath, in through the nose hold for 2, out through the mouth. The way his mother had taught him when he was small. The way she had taught him again in a different context when he was 12. The way he had practiced for 8 years since. His mother had spent 20 years preparing him for a moment exactly like this one. She had not spent those 20 years so that he could waste it now. He was going to do 3 things, in order. The way she had taught him. The way he had rehearsed in his head 100 times since he was old enough to know what rehearsal was. The first thing. He reached down with 2 fingers, picked up the $50 bill Preston Ashford had tossed onto his lap. It was wet. Brown at one corner, soaked through. He folded it, neatly, in thirds, like a letter. Then he reached across the aisle, did not stand up, did not make the gesture bigger than it needed to be, just reached calmly 3 feet across an empty aisle and placed the folded soaked bill on Preston Ashford's tray table, right next to the empty coffee mug. He did not say a word. The act of refusing the tip quietly and publicly said more than a whole sentence could have said. A couple of passengers caught it on their phones. Marisol Vega caught all of it. She tilted her camera slightly to get a better angle on Ashford's face as the folded bill appeared on his tray table. Ashford's smile flickered. Just for a second. He was not used to his money being refused. The second thing. Elijah pulled out his phone. Opened the voice memo application, pressed record, held the phone up where everybody in the cabin could see it, held it exactly the way he had been taught to hold it, not hidden, not concealed, openly, visibly, so that nobody could later claim they had not known. He took another breath, and then he spoke, calmly, clearly, like a bell. "The time is 8:14 a.m., Mountain Time. My name is Elijah Morgan. I am a passenger in seat 2A on this flight from Denver International Airport to Reagan National Airport. The passenger seated in 2C, whom I just heard the lead flight attendant address by the name Mr. Ashford, just deliberately poured a full ceramic mug of scalding coffee across my chest. My laptop and my personal documents. He did not spill it. He poured it, with intent, directly at me. He then called me Quote Boy. He told me to move to the back of the plane because of my color. He dropped cash onto my lap quote to buy a new shirt. There are approximately 29 witnesses in this cabin, including 2 crew members. I have not raised my voice at any point. I have not been physically aggressive at any point. I have not left my seat. I am recording this for legal documentation purposes." He lowered the phone, glanced across the aisle. Ashford was staring at him. The whiskey color had drained slightly from his cheeks. He was trying to figure out what had just happened. He had never in 52 years on this planet had somebody calmly on the record describe back to him exactly what he had just done while he was still sitting there doing it. Elijah kept his voice level, "Sir, you just committed assault in front of a lot of witnesses. I hope your lawyer is better than your judgment, because I can promise you mine is." Ashford blinked. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. He had not expected that sentence. He recovered the only way a man like him knew how to recover. He laughed, loud, turned to Bethany, who had frozen mid-step in the aisle with a linen napkin in her hand. "CC. This is what they do, Bethany. They memorize the script, witnesses, documentation, legal protection. They are trained for this from kindergarten." He did not drop his voice when he said it. He said it at the exact same volume he had said boy, and that is when Preston Ashford did the single stupidest thing he had done since boarding. I mentioned it 1 minute ago in the story, and I'm going to say it again now slowly because I need you to really sit with it. He pulled out his own phone. He filmed Elijah, while laughing. He posted it live in real time to his own Instagram story. Caption, "First class these days." Then he set the phone down and took another sip of Macallan. That 10-second clip captioned by the defendant was going to be Exhibit 4 at a federal trial in 8 months. The prosecution was going to describe it in the closing argument as the defendant's own confession, delivered with a smile, time-stamped by a third-party corporation, authenticated by Meta itself. You cannot make this stuff up. I wish I could. The third thing, Elijah did not stop the recording. He let it keep running down on his tray table, pointed up, catching audio. He moved his phone slightly so the lens had a clean view of Preston Ashford. Then he did something his mother had told him to do when he was 14, and he had never forgotten. He looked around the cabin, deliberately, slowly, one face at a time. He made eye contact with the businessman who had laughed. He made eye contact with the woman in 3D who had turned to her window. He made eye contact with the man in 5C who was suddenly very interested in the in-flight magazine. He made eye contact with the older Latino man in a Broncos cap in row 5, whose jaw was so tight the muscle was twitching, whose eyes dropped immediately when Elijah looked at him. Elijah would think later that that man had wanted to say something, had not known how, would carry that morning in him for the rest of his life. He made eye contact with Marisol Vega. Marisol Vega did not look away. She held his gaze for 2 full seconds. She nodded once, small, almost imperceptible. A nod that said, "I see you. I am recording. I am not going to stop." Elijah nodded back. The smallest nod in the history of the cabin. That moment, 2 strangers across a cabin passed back and forth in under 3 seconds, was going to be the most important nonverbal exchange of Preston Ashford's criminal trial. Elijah sat very still in his coffee-soaked shirt. Steam had stopped rising. The coffee was cooling. His skin was starting to sting where the fabric was pressed against it. He would find out 3 hours later at Howard University Health Services that the skin on his chest was second-degree burned in 2 places. Not severe, visible, photographable, treatable with ointment and bandages for 3 weeks. The photographs of those burns would be Exhibit 2. The little girl in row 4 was still looking at him over the seat. She had not stopped looking. Elijah caught her eye, and he did the most dignified thing anybody did in that cabin for the entire flight. He smiled at her. A small, calm, reassuring smile. A smile that said, "I am okay. You do not have to be afraid for me. I have got this." The little girl's mother had finally managed to pull her daughter back down into her seat, but the girl kept peeking around the headrest. Elijah smiled at her every single time. For 90 more minutes, nobody on that airplane offered Elijah Morgan so much as a clean napkin. 29 people chose silence. Elijah Morgan chose something else entirely. He chose to remember every single face. Somebody at the front of the cabin had pressed the call button. Not Elijah. Not Ashford. One of the other passengers, an older white woman in seat 1D who had turned halfway around in her seat, seen the dark stain on Elijah's shirt and the cash on his lap, and decided to her limited credit that she wanted this dealt with. The purser came down the aisle. His name was Donovan Blake. He was 59 years old. He had been with the airline for 30 years. His hair had been parted the same way since 1994. His uniform was pressed. His shoes were shined. He was the kind of company man who believed deep in his bones that the customer in the more expensive suit was always the customer who was right. He stopped at row 2, looked at the situation. He looked at Preston Ashford's charcoal three-piece and gold Patek. He looked at Elijah Morgan's Howard University hoodie and stained white shirt. He made his decision in under 3 seconds. And he addressed Elijah. Not Ashford. Elijah, son, I am going to need you to put the phone away and keep things under control for the rest of this flight. If there is another disturbance, I will have law enforcement meet the aircraft at the gate. Are we clear? Elijah looked up at him, not angry, tired, already a little tired. Sir, with respect, I am the one who was assaulted. I am recording for my own legal protection. That is lawful under federal law. One-party consent applies in federal airspace. Son, I am not going to debate this with you. The word son, spoken by a man who had called Preston Ashford sir 30 seconds ago. The second dog whistle of the hour. From the second airline employee in under 10 minutes. Elijah did not close his eyes. He did not sigh. He did not take the bait. He lifted his phone slightly so the microphone was closer to his mouth, and he spoke directly into the still-running recording. Purser just addressed me as son while addressing Mr. Ashford as sir. Time stamp 8:17 a.m., Mountain. Name on his uniform badge, Donovan Blake. I did not consent to being called son. I am a passenger. I am 20 years old. My name is Elijah Morgan. Donovan Blake's face went a color that was not quite red and not quite white. He glanced at Ashford. Ashford did not look at him. Ashford was looking out the window, arms folded like a man waiting for a child to stop throwing a tantrum. Blake cleared his throat. Son, I'm Mr. Morgan. Please. Mr. Morgan. He said it the way a man says a word he did not want to say. I am asking you as the senior crew member on this flight to stop recording. Sir. I decline, respectfully. Are you refusing a direct crew instruction? I am declining an unlawful one. Under 14 CFR 121, the instructions crew may lawfully give passengers concerned safety of flight. My phone does not affect safety of flight. It is in airplane mode. My recording does not affect safety of flight. Your instruction is not lawful. I decline. Blake stood in the aisle for a long moment. The whole cabin was watching him now. He had the look of a man who had walked into a room expecting to bully a teenager and had found instead an attorney in a Howard University hoodie. He glanced back at Ashford. Ashford shrugged, like a man washing his hands of a small inconvenience. Blake turned, walked back up the aisle, did not look at Elijah again. The cabin settled into a pressurized, hissing silence. For the next 90 minutes, 29 people chose silence. Elijah Morgan sat in a wet shirt beside a dead laptop. Nobody offered him a napkin. Nobody offered him a cup of water. Nobody offered him a change of clothes. Nobody asked if his skin was burned. The only person who looked at him at all for the rest of the flight was the little girl in row 4. Every time she peeked over the seat, he smiled at her. Small, calm, reassuring. Every time she smiled back. And 6 rows behind her, Marisol Vega kept filming. Her phone balanced on her tray table angled up the aisle, her arm casual, her face blank. She was not going to stop. She was not going to stop for the next 90 minutes, no matter what anyone on that plane said or did not do. And somewhere still running inside Elijah Morgan's pocket, a voice memo was still recording, capturing every cough, every seat belt click, every passing announcement, every sip of Preston Ashford's 4th Macallan. It was going to run for 3 hours and 11 minutes before Elijah finally stopped it. It was going to be Exhibit 3. Elijah sat very still. The coffee was cooling now. The skin underneath the fabric had started to sting. The stain across his chest had darkened, dried at the edges. He did not move. He did not pull the fabric off his skin. He kept his hands visible on the tray table, and for one long second, he was not on an airplane anymore. He was 12 years old. He was standing in a CVS on Connecticut Avenue in northwest Washington, D.C. with his mother. It was a Tuesday evening in October. His mother had picked him up from soccer practice. He still had shin guards on under his school pants. She had stopped at the CVS on the way home because his grandmother's birthday was that weekend and she needed candles. 12-year-old Elijah was walking one aisle behind her. He had picked up a pack of spearmint gum off an end cap and was holding it in his right hand. Not opened, not unwrapped, just holding it the way a 12-year-old holds a thing he is going to buy with his own allowance. His mother, Celeste Morgan, 37 years old at the time, a senior civil rights attorney at a D.C. nonprofit. Not yet a federal judge, but already the kind of lawyer other lawyers whispered about, was holding a red shopping basket with cough drops and a box of birthday candles in it. A security guard at the end of aisle 4 had noticed them as soon as they walked in. He had followed them for 3 aisles. Not close, just close enough. Glancing, pretending to restock a shelf. Glancing again. Celeste had felt it. She always did. She had spent her entire career feeling it. She got to aisle 7. She stopped walking. She set the red shopping basket down very slowly on the linoleum floor. She turned around all the way around and she faced the guard. She was 5'4". Her hair was in a short natural. She was wearing a gray wool coat over work clothes. She was holding a car key in her right hand. She was not smiling. She spoke in a voice so calm that every single person in that aisle, including a white pharmacist who had been hovering near the counter, stopped moving. My son is 12 years old. He is holding a single pack of gum he has not opened. He has been holding it for approximately 4 minutes. You have followed us since aisle 4. Would you like to walk us to the register yourself, or would you prefer that I call your store manager to the floor right now on camera for everyone's permanent record? The guard did not answer. He stared at her for maybe 2 seconds. Then he turned and walked back toward the front of the store. He pretended to restock a display of Halloween candy that did not need restocking. Celeste picked up her basket. She walked to the register. She paid for the cough drops, the birthday candles, and the pack of gum. She held her son's hand all the way to the car. In the car, she did not start the engine. She put her hands on the steering wheel and she sat there for a long minute. Her hands were not shaking. 12-year-old Elijah, who had been watching her face very carefully, noticed that her hands were not shaking. He would remember that for the rest of his life. He would tell it years later to a therapist at Howard University in a session he would schedule after his college roommate asked him why he never raised his voice. He would say, "My mother's hands were not shaking," and the therapist would nod and write something down. Celeste turned to him in the passenger seat. She took his 12-year-old chin in her hand. She looked him in the eye. And she said the sentence that Elijah Morgan would carry with him for every single day of the next 8 years of his life, including the morning Preston Kingsley Ashford III poured coffee on his chest at 35,000 feet. "Baby, I need you to listen to me very carefully, because I am only going to say this once, and you are going to remember it for the rest of your life." "Yes, ma'am." "There are people in this world who will try to write a story about you using nothing but their eyes. They will write that story faster than you can introduce yourself. And once they have written it, they will believe every single word of it. More than they believe their own ears. More than they believe their own eyes in the next minute. They will believe that story more than they believe you." "Yes, ma'am." "Your job is never to argue with that story. Arguing with it gives it air. It feeds it. It makes it real. The more you argue, the bigger it gets, and the smaller you get in the eyes of the people who needed to believe it in the first place." "Yes, ma'am." "So you are never going to argue with it, baby. Not with your voice. Not with your fists. Not with anything." "Then what do I do?" "Mama, you keep receipts. Every single time. Receipts. Receipts. You write down what was said. You write down who said it. You write down the time. You write down the place. You put it somewhere safe. And then, baby, you wait. What do I wait for? You wait for the law. 12-year-old Elijah nodded. He did not fully understand yet. Celeste Morgan went on. The law in this country is slow, baby. And it is ugly. And it is tired. And most days it does not work for people who look like you and me. But I am going to tell you something true, Elijah Morgan, and you are going to remember this too. The law is very, very good at reading receipts. Yes, ma'am. So when a man puts his hands on you, or puts his words on you, or puts his eyes on you, the way that man in the store just did, you do not fight him, baby. You document him, and then you let the receipts do the work your fists would want to do. Do you understand me? Yes, ma'am, I understand you. That night when they got home, she sat at the kitchen table with an index card and a black pen. She wrote out 3 lines. She took the card to the FedEx 2 blocks over. She had it laminated. She slid the laminated card into a small plastic sleeve behind his school ID in his wallet. 8 years later, on an airplane at 35,000 feet, that card was still sitting in that same wallet behind a Howard University ID 6 inches above a soaked $50 bill. You are calm. You are loved. You belong. Elijah Morgan had been keeping receipts for 8 years. He was very, very good at it, back in the present. The cabin hummed at cruising altitude. The fastened seatbelt sign was dark. Outside the window, the sun had come all the way up and filled the cabin with a pale, cold light. The coffee on Elijah's chest had cooled. The stain had started to dry at the edges, brown and crusted. His phone was still recording in his pocket. He had stopped watching Preston Ashford. He did not need to watch him anymore. He was memorizing faces instead. Row 3 aisle seat, white businessman, navy suit, blue tie. Had laughed once. Was now on his phone, would not meet Elijah's eyes when Elijah looked at him. Row 3 window, woman in pearl earrings, mid-40s, had gasped once, was now pretending to be deeply asleep. Row 4, the little girl and her mother, little girl still peeking over the seat, mother trying harder and harder to hold her still. Mother would not meet Elijah's eyes either, but the girl did. Every time. Row 5. Older Latino man. Broncos cap. Jaw still clenched. Hands gripping the armrests. Did not look up. The muscle in the side of his jaw was still twitching. Row 6 aisle. Marisol Vega. Phone still up. Casual. Arm resting on the armrest. Camera angled just right. She gave him another tiny nod. He gave her one back. Row 7. Empty. Row 8. A man in his 30s, fitness influencer build, watching a show on his iPad with his headphones in, had not looked up once, had missed the entire assault, was about to find out 45 minutes from now that he had been the only adult in first class who genuinely had not known what had happened, and he was going to feel sick about it for a week. Elijah filed every single face away. The call button dinged. Somebody somewhere in coach wanted another water. Bethany Tran walked up the aisle, eyes fixed straight ahead, body angled to avoid so much as brushing Elijah's elbow. She did not look at him. She walked past. 40 seconds later, she walked back the other way with a plastic cup of water for a passenger in row 17. Did not look at Elijah either direction. In the galley up front, Donovan Blake was speaking in a low, urgent voice into the intercom phone. Elijah could not hear the words, but he could guess. Blake was calling the cockpit. Blake was telling the captain that there had been an in-flight disturbance. Blake was describing Elijah, not Ashford, as the cause. Elijah closed his eyes for the span of one long breath, opened them, reached down, picked up his pen, reached for the small notebook he kept in the seat back pocket. A gift from his grandmother his senior year of high school, black leather bound, nothing fancy. He turned to a clean page. and he started writing. Timestamp: 8:14 a.m. Mountain, seat 2A. Male passenger, 2C, approximately 55. White silver hair, charcoal 3-piece gold watch. Flight attendant addressed him as Mr. Ashford. Poured scalding coffee on me. Intentional poor wrist tilted deliberate. Used the word boy. Used the phrase, "your kind." Tossed $50 bill on my lap. Told me to move to economy. Filmed me on his own phone. Laughed while doing it. Posted to his own Instagram story. I could see the screen. I refused the bill. Folded and returned to his tray table. Stated verbally on voice memo what happened. Flight attendant Bethany Tran addressed him first, asked if his suit was okay. Did not ask about my injuries. Purser Donovan Blake called me son, called Ashford sir. Ordered me to stop recording. I declined. He walked away. Currently second-degree burn possibly across upper chest. Will photograph on arrival. Laptop destroyed. Printed court filing destroyed. He kept writing. Row 3, seat 3C. White male, late 40s, navy suit, blue tie. Laughed out loud when coffee was poured. Did not intervene. Would not make eye contact after. Row 3, seat 3D. White female, mid-40s. Gasped. Turned to window. Did not intervene. Row 4, seat 4C. White female, early 30s. With small daughter, approximately 7 years old, window seat. Daughter asked mother why the man did it. Mother shushed. Did not intervene. Row 5, seat 5C. Hispanic male, late 50s. Broncos cap. Distressed. Did not intervene. May have wanted to. Row 6, seat 6B. Female, mid-30s. Appears to be filming the whole incident. Made eye contact. Nodded. Still filming as of this writing. Crew: Bethany Tran. Flight attendant. Checked on Ashford's suit before checking on me. Never checked on me. Donovan Blake. Purser. Called me son. Called Ashford sir. Attempted to stop my recording. Did not ask Ashford any questions about the incident. He set the pen down. He closed the notebook. He slid it into the inside pocket of his Howard hoodie where the fabric was still dry. And he sat in a wet shirt for 90 more minutes beside a dead laptop in a cabin where 29 people had chosen not to speak. Every time the little girl in row 4 peeked over her seat, he smiled at her. Every time she smiled back. That was the most dignified thing happening in that cabin for the next 90 minutes. And I want you to remember it because in about 3 minutes of this video, we are going to talk about the 29 people who stayed silent and what that silence was worth. I need to stop the story right here, just for a second. I need you to put yourself in row 3. Close your eyes if you have to. I'll wait. You are sitting in seat 3C. You are wearing a navy suit, or you are wearing workout clothes, or you are wearing whatever you were wearing the last time you were on an airplane. It does not matter. What matters is that you are awake. You are not asleep. You are not listening to music with noise-canceling headphones. You are awake, and your phone is in your hand, and you are half looking at an email and half looking at the cabin in front of you. You just watched a man in a 3-piece suit pour a full mug of scalding coffee onto a 20-year-old college kid in a Howard hoodie. You just heard the word boy. You just watched $50 land on that kid's lap like it was a tip. You just watched the flight attendant wipe off the wrong man's suit. Now answer me honestly. I do not want the answer that sounds good in a comment section. I do not want the answer you would give at a dinner party 6 months from now when this story has gone viral and you are trying to sound like the kind of person you wish you were. What would you actually do? Would you stand up? Would you film it? Would you press your own call button for a second flight attendant? Would you walk up the aisle and say, "Sir, are you okay?" to the 20-year-old, not to the man in the 3-piece suit? To the 20-year-old. Or, and this is the uncomfortable one, would you do what 29 other human beings in that cabin did and suddenly find your own phone screen very, very interesting for the next 90 minutes? Drop your honest answer in the comments, not what sounds good, what you really think you would do. And while you are down there, if this story is hitting you the way I think it is hitting you right now, hit that subscribe button. Share this video with somebody who needs to see it, because in about 3 minutes of this video, an airport cop is going to walk onto this airplane and he is going to make exactly the same choice those 29 passengers just made. And one of them, the cop or the passengers, is going to lose his badge, his pension, and 3 years of his freedom over it. Back to the story. The plane is starting its descent into Reagan National. The plane started its descent into Reagan National Airport 90 minutes after the coffee was poured. The fasten seatbelt sign dinged on. Elijah did not need to buckle in. He had not unbuckled once since boarding. His mother had taught him when he was 10 that when something was wrong on an airplane, the safest thing a black man could do was sit very still with his seatbelt fastened and his hands visible on the tray table. He had done that for 90 minutes. His hands were still visible. Somewhere over the Potomac, the intercom crackled on. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Marshall speaking. We are beginning our final descent into Washington Reagan National Airport. Local time is 10:02 a.m. Eastern. Due to an in-flight disturbance, passengers in row 2 are asked to remain seated upon arrival while law enforcement boards the aircraft. All other passengers will be permitted to deplane normally. Thank you for your cooperation this morning. Row 2, not 2C, not Mr. Ashford, just row 2. Elijah heard it the way he was meant to hear it. The cabin heard it the way they were meant to hear it. Preston Ashford, sitting in 2C, did not even blink. He was not worried. He had never been the kind of man who worried about a captain's announcement. He stood up before the seatbelt sign was off, straightened his jacket, adjusted his cufflinks, pulled his roller bag out of the overhead bin. Nobody told him to sit back down. Nobody said a word to him. Elijah stayed in his seat. Hands still visible. Seatbelt still on. The plane taxied. The jet bridge connected with a soft metallic thunk. The cabin door opened. 2 airport police officers stepped in. The first one was Officer Raymond Kessler, 19 years on the job with the Metropolitan Washington Airport's Authority Police. 52 years old, barrel chest, gray in his mustache. The kind of mustache a man keeps because his wife stopped caring about it somewhere around 2008. His partner was Officer Tyler Briggs, 28 years old, 3 years on the force, still young enough to have a conscience, still new enough to not always know what to do with it when it started pinging. Donovan Blake got to them first. "Thanks for coming, officers." Young black male passenger, seat 2A. Agitated during the flight, recording without consent. Refused direct crew instructions. Possible verbal altercation with another first-class passenger. Notice what Donovan Blake did not say. He did not say that the other passenger had poured scalding coffee on a 20-year-old college kid. He did not say that the other passenger had used a racial slur. He did not say that the other passenger had tossed cash onto the victim's lap. He did not say that the victim had a burn on his chest that was going to be photographed by a Howard University physician 4 hours from now. Donovan Blake told Officer Raymond Kessler a story. And that story had a suspect. And the suspect was sitting in seat 2A in a coffee-stained Howard University hoodie with his hands visible on the tray table. Kessler did not ask Preston Ashford a single question. He did not ask Bethany Tran a single question. He did not ask the older Latino man in the Broncos cap. He did not ask the little girl's mother. He did not ask Marisol Vega, who was standing now in the aisle with her phone still up. He walked directly to seat 2A, son. "Grab your bag. Step out to the jet bridge with me." Elijah did not move. Kept his hands visible. Voice calm. "Officer, am I being detained? You are being asked to cooperate. Do not make this harder than it needs to be." "Sir, I am asking a direct question under law. Am I being detained or am I free to go?" Kessler's face did a small tight thing. "You are being detained pending investigation of an in-flight disturbance. Grab your bag. Come with me." "Yes, sir." Elijah stood up, collected the dead laptop, folded the ruined papers, shouldered his backpack. He walked past rows of passengers who were all suddenly very interested in their phones. The little girl in row 4 watched him go. Her mother, for the first time in 3 hours, did not try to pull her back down. Marisol Vega stepped to the side to let Elijah pass. Her phone was still up. She did not say a word. She did not have to. The phone said everything. On the jet bridge, the fluorescent lights hummed. The air was stale warm, thick with jet fuel fumes. A cleaning crew was stacking trash bags at the far end. They looked up when Kessler and Elijah stepped off the plane, saw the situation, looked back down at their trash bags. Preston Ashford was one step behind them. He walked out of the cabin, past Kessler and Briggs, past the cleaning crew. Nobody told him to stop. He stopped anyway. 10 feet down the jet bridge. He leaned against the metal wall, arms folded. He wanted to watch. Kessler turned his back to Ashford, planted himself in front of Elijah, held out one gloved hand. Bag. Elijah did not move. "Officer, I do not consent to a search. Am I being detained or arrested?" Kessler rolled his eyes. Actually rolled them. "Kid, you watch too much TV." And then he took the bag anyway, unzipped it, right there on the jet bridge carpet, started pulling items out one by one, like he was sorting laundry. Out came the copy of Just Mercy. Kessler looked at the cover, snorted, of course. Out came the printed court filing. Kessler flipped through it, brow furrowed, not really reading. The caption at the top of the first page said clearly in black 14-point font, "United States versus Ashford Capital Holdings, case number 1:25 something." Kessler did not register what he was holding. He glanced at it, tossed it on the pile, did not make the connection. If he had made the connection in that moment, his next 20 minutes might have gone differently. They did not. Out came Elijah's wallet. Kessler opened it, flipped through the cards. Howard University student ID debit card from a credit union. DC Metro card. $20 cash in 20s. He did not look behind the Howard ID. He missed the small laminated card entirely. He closed the wallet, tossed it on the pile. Out came a pack of mint gum. Out came the phone charger. Out came the spiral notebook Elijah had been writing in for the last 90 minutes. Kessler flipped through it, squinted. He could not read Elijah's handwriting. He tossed the notebook on the pile. If Officer Raymond Kessler had read one single page of that notebook, his next 20 minutes might have gone differently too. They were not going to. Finally, Kessler reached for the phone in Elijah's hand. "I will take that. Officer, that phone contains an active recording of the assault against me. It is currently running. If you confiscate it, you are seizing evidence without a warrant." "Kid." I said, "I will take it." Elijah did not hand it over right away. Instead, he lifted it one last time, spoke clearly into the microphone. "Officer Kessler, whose badge I can read is confiscating my phone without a warrant, without probable cause, and without consent. I have requested counsel. My request has not been honored. I am a U.S. citizen. I am on federal property. I have been assaulted on a federal flight, and I am now being searched without cause. This recording will be backed up to cloud storage automatically the moment this phone reconnects to the terminal Wi-Fi." Then he handed the phone to Kessler. Kessler's face went a tight, furious red. "Counsel, for a coffee spill. Boy, you are not under arrest. Yet." There it was. The second weaponized use of that word in under 3 hours. This time from a man in a uniform, on federal property, to a 20-year-old citizen whose only crime had been sitting in a seat he had paid for in miles he had earned himself. Elijah closed his eyes for the span of one slow breath, opened them. 10 feet down the jet bridge, Preston Ashford was smiling. Kessler pocketed the phone, leaned in close. His breath was coffee and old cigarettes. His voice dropped into the fake-friendly register cops use when they want you to think they are doing you a favor. "Look, here is how this is going to go, mister. Mr. Ashford is a very important man. He is not pressing charges against you. Yet. You apologize to him right now. I put you in a cab, you go home. Your mom does not have to drive to the airport. You keep running your mouth. I take you downtown. You miss your ride. Your mom has to come pick you up from a precinct in a city you do not even live in. Your call, son. Elijah looked past Kessler at Ashford. Ashford mouthed one word at him. Apologize. Elijah turned back to Kessler. He did not raise his voice. He did not raise his chin. He did not make a single gesture that could, on body cam review, later be described as threatening. He had spent 8 years not making those gestures. Sir, I am not apologizing for being assaulted. I would like my phone back. I would like counsel. I would like a supervisor present, and I would like every item you removed from my bag to be placed back in my bag in front of me now. Kessler's face went fully red. Not pink. Red. You do not get to make demands. You are a passenger who caused a disturbance. I have seen your type 100 times. You think you are smarter than you are. Behind him, Officer Tyler Briggs cleared his throat. Ray. Kessler did not turn around. Ray. Maybe we should call a sergeant. Briggs. I got this. Stand down. Ray the Kid asked for counsel. And a supervisor. Both of those are Briggs. I said I got this. Briggs stepped back 1 foot. He did not say anything else, but he did not step back 2 feet, and he did not walk away. He stayed close. His right hand was resting lightly on the edge of his duty belt. His left hand had drifted in the last 30 seconds toward the shoulder radio clipped to his vest. 10 feet down the jet bridge, Preston Ashford decided he was done being delayed. Officer, am I free to go? I have a 10 o'clock with Senator Harmon. Kessler pivoted like a man switching from a wolf to a golden retriever. His whole posture changed. His face went from red to something almost apologetic. Of course, Mr. Ashford. Apologies for the delay, sir. Have a good morning. Preston Ashford smoothed his suit jacket, adjusted his gold watch, picked up his roller bag. He walked past Elijah on his way toward the terminal, and he slowed down, leaned in close. The angle was perfect. Kessler's body was between Ashford and the body cam on Briggs's vest. Ashford's voice was low, off the officer's radar. It was not off the radar of the security microphone installed in the ceiling of the jet bridge, which was run by the airport's operations center, and which the MWAA would pull and timestamp 8 days later as part of the federal civil rights investigation. It was not off the radar of Marisol Vega, who had exited the cabin 20 seconds earlier and was standing now 6 feet away against the opposite jet bridge wall with her phone still up and her microphone still on. It was not off the radar of 3 other passenger phones, all of them held by first-class passengers who had finally, at the last possible moment, decided to stop being part of the 29. Ashford said quietly into Elijah's ear, "Your kind never learns." Elijah did not move, did not flinch, did not turn his head. Ashford straightened, walked on. His roller bag clicked down the jet bridge behind him. Kessler, frustrated that Elijah would not crack, squared up, planted his feet, rested his hand on the grip of his service weapon, not drawing it, just resting his hand on it. The universal cop gesture that means, I am about to decide you are not cooperating. All right, last chance. Turn around, hands on the wall. We are going to do this the hard way. Elijah did not turn around. He did not raise his voice. He said one sentence, calm as the morning he had boarded the plane. Officer, before you do that, I would like to make one phone call. It is a right. You already have my phone. I am asking you to dial one number from my wallet. The top card tucked behind my Howard University ID. Just dial it. Put it on speaker. That is all I am asking. Kessler laughed. Out loud. One hard laugh. Kid, I am not your secretary. Turn around. Ray. Officer Tyler Briggs stepped forward one step. He did not raise his voice either. He had been watching Elijah Morgan's composure for the last 40 minutes. He had been watching it the way a young cop watches a man he is starting to suspect is not the man his training officer is telling him he is. "Ray, Briggs, what? Let me make the call. It is one phone call. It is one number. If he is who he says he is, we lose nothing. If he is not, we still have the upper hand." Kessler's jaw worked. "Fine. Briggs, make the call, quick, so we can book him." Briggs nodded once, stepped toward Elijah. "Sir." "Which wallet pocket?" "Behind the Howard ID, top slot. Small laminated card." "Thank you, officer." Briggs reached into Elijah's backpack, still open on the jet bridge carpet, pulled out the wallet, opened it. He slid the Howard University student ID out of the top slot. Behind it, in a small plastic sleeve, was a business card-sized laminated slip of paper. Briggs pulled it out with 2 fingers. He read the printed line at the very top of the card. His face changed. It did not just go pale. It went the specific shade of white that a man's face goes when he has, in the span of 1 full second, understood exactly how bad his next 60 seconds are about to be. The whites of his eyes got bigger. His lips parted. His grip on the card tightened. He looked up at Kessler, opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Ray." "What?" "Ray, you need to read this." Kessler snatched the card out of his partner's hand, annoyed, expecting a line from a children's motivational poster. He read the first line. "You are calm. You are loved. You belong." He almost said something dismissive. The muscles in his face had already started to form the dismissive thing, a lip curl, a short laugh. Then his eyes slid down to the second half of the card, the part Briggs had actually been reading, the part that said in smaller print below the 3 sentences Elijah's mother had written for her 12-year-old son, a second line of printed text. A name, a title, a direct phone number. Kessler read it again. His thick fingers tightened around the small laminated rectangle. The blood visibly left his face, starting at the bridge of his nose and spreading outward. His mustache seemed to sag. Somewhere in the terminal beyond the jet bridge, a cheerful, automated voice was announcing gate changes for Delta Flight 1170. Somewhere else, a man was selling overpriced pretzels. Somewhere else, a mother was consoling a toddler who had dropped his juice. The ordinary morning of Reagan National Airport continued around them. But on this one particular jet bridge, in this one particular moment time, was doing something very cruel to Officer Raymond Kessler. He looked up slowly, looked at Elijah, looked at the pile of items on the jet bridge carpet, looked at the phone in his own hand which he had confiscated without a warrant 6 minutes ago. Elijah looked back at him. Calm, still calm, always calm. "Officer, I would appreciate it if you would make the call now." Kessler's voice came out hoarse. "Briggs, Ray, dial the number." "Yes, sir." Tyler Briggs's hands were already shaking as he pulled out his own cell phone. He did not want to use Elijah's phone. He did not want to admit on a recording that Elijah's phone was in his partner's pocket. He pulled up the dial pad, read the 10 digits off the back of the laminated card one at a time. His voice was barely above a whisper. 2, 0, 2, 5, 5, 5. He kept going, finished the number, hit call, put it on speaker, held the phone between himself, Elijah, and Kessler. Kessler was staring at the card in his own left hand like it was a live grenade. His right hand had dropped entirely off his service weapon. He did not know what to do with his right hand anymore. He rested it awkwardly on his belt buckle. The phone rang. Once. 10 feet down the jet bridge, a cleaning crew supervisor glanced over, sensed something, decided he did not want to know, went back to his trash bags, twice. Preston Ashford by now was halfway down the terminal concourse, his roller bag clicking behind him. He was walking toward the taxi line. He was thinking about the Senator Harmon meeting. He was thinking about the McAllen on the plane. He was not thinking about the young man in seat 2A anymore. The young man in seat 2A had ceased to be a problem the minute Kessler had walked onto the plane. Ashford had moved on. Third ring. Somebody picked up. "This is Judge Morgan." The voice was unhurried, measured, warm enough to be a mother's voice, cool enough to be a professional's, the voice of a woman who had spent the last 6.5 years not raising it in federal courtrooms, where men twice her size had been screaming at her for a living. Kessler's eyes dropped to the card, stayed there. Briggs swallowed so hard you could hear it on the recording later. "Ma'am, this is Officer Tyler Briggs with MWAA Police at Reagan National. We are on a jet bridge with a young man who says his name is..." As Elijah Briggs glanced up at Elijah. Elijah nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Elijah Morgan." There was the smallest pause on the line, the kind of pause a mother takes when she is deciding in a single half-breath between panic and precision. Judge Celeste Morgan chose precision. "Officer Briggs." "Yes, ma'am. I am going to ask you one question. I would like a careful answer. On what grounds are you detaining my son?" Briggs opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Kessler. Kessler was not looking at him. Briggs took a breath. "Ma'am, your son was detained pending investigation of an in-flight disturbance." "We are." Kessler leaned in toward the phone. His voice had lost about 40% of its volume since 30 seconds ago. "Your Honor, ma'am, this is Officer Kessler. There was a reported in-flight disturbance, ma'am. Your son was recording and he refused a crew instruction. We were merely..." "Officer Kessler." "Yes, ma'am." "Have you searched his bag?" Long hesitation. "A cursory inspection, ma'am, with his consent. Or with a warrant." "Ma'am?" "Under exigent circumstances, we are authorized to Officer Kessler." Judge Celeste Morgan did not raise her voice. She lowered it. That was somehow worse. "I am a United States District Judge. I know by heart exactly what exigent circumstances are. A spilled drink is not one of them. Hot coffee poured on a passenger is not one of them. A 20-year-old citizen standing calmly on a federal jet bridge asking for counsel with his hands visible in a coffee-stained Howard University hoodie is very definitely not one of them. Officer Kessler, do we understand each other?" "Yes, Your Honor." "You will return my son's phone to him. You will return his laptop. You will return every single item you removed from his bag. You will place all of it back into his bag in his presence now. You will not speak to him again without his counsel present. You will not ask him another question. You will not make him turn around. You will not put your hands on him. I am already in my car. I am 14 minutes from Reagan National. I am driving myself. Am I being clear, Officer Kessler?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Put my son on the phone." Briggs held the phone out toward Elijah. Elijah took it with 2 fingers, lifted it slowly to his ear. His shoulders dropped 1 inch for the first time all morning. "Hey, Mom." "Baby." Her voice was different now. Not cooler, warmer. The professional voice was gone. The mother voice was there. "Baby, are you burned?" "A little." I'm okay, Mom. Is your recording safe?" "It is backed up to the cloud." It started backing up the second this phone reconnected to the terminal Wi-Fi. Officer Kessler has the phone in his pocket. The backup was automatic. "Good boy. You did everything right." "Mom." "Yes, baby. There is one more thing you need to know before you get here." "Tell me." The man who poured the coffee. The man in 2C. His name is Ashford. Preston Ashford. The line went quiet on the other end for a long, long second. Long enough that Briggs glanced at the phone screen to make sure the call was still connected. It was still connected. Judge Celeste Morgan was just not talking yet. When her voice came back, it was a voice her son had heard exactly 3 times in 20 years. Once when his father had called her late to tell her that her own father had died. Once when she had come home from a board meeting to find that somebody had spray-painted a racial slur on their mailbox in Chevy Chase. And once this morning already for a few seconds when Kessler had admitted the search. It was the voice she used when she had decided fully and completely that the gloves were off. Elijah. Ma'am. Preston Kingsley Ashford III. Of Ashford Capital Holdings. Yes, ma'am. I saw the name on a printed court filing I had in my bag. I pulled it from Pacer last night for the clerkship. I did not connect it to him in the cabin. I am sorry. Do not apologize, baby. Yes, ma'am. Another pause. This one was shorter. You could hear a turn signal clicking through the speaker. You could hear her car accelerating. When she spoke again, her voice had gone glacial. I am the presiding judge on his securities fraud trial Monday morning. 9 a.m., courtroom 26. I have been the presiding judge on that case for 14 months. Jury selection was finalized Thursday. I was reading the government's trial brief last night when you texted me from Denver. Yes, ma'am. I will be filing my formal recusal from the case this afternoon. I will be filing a written complaint with the FBI Civil Rights Division, the Department of Justice, Public Integrity Section, and the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia this afternoon. I will be filing an additional complaint with the General Counsel of this airline by close of business today. I will be filing that one myself. Their General Counsel Miriam Fletcher was 2 years ahead of me at Georgetown Law. I know her personally. She is going to hate this day. Yes, ma'am. Stay where you are, baby. Do not say another word to those officers without me present. Drink some water if they have any. I am coming. Yes, ma'am. Love you. I love you more. The line clicked off. Elijah lowered the phone slowly. He handed it back to Briggs. Briggs took it with both hands. Elijah looked up. 30 feet down the terminal concourse, Preston Kingsley Ashford III had stopped walking. His roller bag had clattered to a stop next to him. His right hand was resting on the handle. His left hand was at his side. His phone was in his jacket pocket. He had been half listening since the phone call had started. Something in the temperature of the voice coming through that speaker, even muffled by distance, even from 60 feet away in a busy concourse, had reached him. Specifically, he had heard his own name. He turned around. Slowly, he looked at Elijah. He looked at the 2 officers. He looked at Briggs, who was still holding the small laminated card like it had personally bitten him. Preston Ashford walked back toward them. Each step was slower than the last. By the 3rd step, passengers in the concourse had started to notice. A few of them slowed to watch. A few of them lifted their phones. A freelance reporter named Nora Hollis, who had been sitting in the airport bar across from the concourse finishing a Bloody Mary after covering a congressional hearing in Denver the day before, had been watching the incident on the jet bridge from her bar stool for the last 4 minutes. She had put down her drink 2 minutes ago. She had pulled out her phone, her real phone, the one she used for work, and she had been filming the entire jet bridge confrontation in 4K from a perfect angle for the last 90 seconds. She did not know who Elijah was. She did not know who Ashford was. She did not know yet that the boy on the jet bridge was a federal judge's son. She knew the scene was filed ready, and she knew how to film. Ashford stopped 6 feet from Elijah. His face was tight. His eyes were moving between Kessler and Briggs and Elijah and back. What? Nobody answered him. What? What is going on? Kessler could not speak. Kessler was still staring at the card in his hand. Briggs was staring at Kessler. Elijah turned to face Preston Ashford. For the first time all morning he allowed himself a small, flat smile. It was not cruel. It was not triumphant. It was just the smile of a young man who had been patient for a very long time and who was now finally done being patient. Mr. Ashford. What? I do not think we were properly introduced on the aircraft. Ashford did not answer. Elijah took one step forward. His voice was calm. It carried down the concourse the way a trained lawyer's voice carries, the way his mother's voice had always carried at the kitchen table, the way a federal prosecutor's voice would, in 8 months, carry when she held up a single word in front of a jury. My name is Elijah Morgan. I am a junior at Howard University. I am studying political science. I am pre-law. In 3 weeks, I begin a summer clerkship at the American Civil Liberties Union of the National Capital Area. I applied for that clerkship on my own. I earned it on my own. Ashford blinked. His mouth opened, closed. He tried to look at Kessler for help. Kessler was looking at the carpet. My mother is the Honorable Celeste Morgan, United States District Judge, District of Columbia. She was appointed by the President of the United States in 2019. She was confirmed unanimously by the United States Senate that same summer. Her chambers are on the 4th floor of the E. Barrett Prettyman Federal Courthouse in Washington. Ashford's face was no longer tight. It was losing its color from the bridge of the nose outward the exact same way Officer Raymond Kessler's had 8 minutes ago. 3 days from now, Mr. Ashford, at 9 a.m. on Monday morning, my mother was scheduled to preside over your securities fraud trial. She was the presiding judge on United States versus Ashford Capital Holdings. She is right now filing her formal recusal. She is right now filing a civil rights complaint with the FBI. She is right now on the phone with the general counsel of this airline, who happens to be an old classmate of hers. You are. Sir, I am exactly who you poured that coffee on. Ashford's knees visibly buckled. He reached out, put one hand on the terminal column beside him. The gold watch on his wrist caught the fluorescent light one last time. Elijah did not stop. He had not rehearsed this speech. His mother had not taught him this speech. His mother had only taught him when he was 12 to keep receipts. But he had been collecting receipts for 90 minutes, and he had been carrying them for 8 years, and the words were there inside him already formed, waiting for the exact right morning to walk out of his mouth. Mr. Ashford, when you asked me an hour and a half ago to move to the back of this airplane, I want you to hear me very clearly. I was already exactly where I belonged. I had paid for that seat. I had earned the miles to upgrade into that seat with 2 summers of lifeguard work at a community pool in Southeast D.C. I had earned every single dollar of that work at minimum wage plus tips. I had saved it. I had spent it. That seat was mine. I did not. You did, sir. On your own recording, which is now in FBI cloud storage, you did. You called me boy. You called me your kind. You told me to move to the back where my kind fits. You dropped $50 on my lap like a tip. Ashford's mouth opened again. Elijah held up a hand. Not hostile, just final. Sir, I am not finished. Ashford closed his mouth. When you poured that coffee on me, you were not pouring it on me. You were pouring it on my mother. You were pouring it on my grandfather, who was called boy by a sheriff in Tuscaloosa in 1963. You were pouring it on my great-grandfather, who was called boy in a Mississippi courtroom in 1947. You were pouring it on every single young man who has ever sat down in a seat he paid for and been told by somebody with more money than manners that the seat was not really his. By now, a small crowd had gathered. 24 people, maybe more. At least 15 phones were up. Nora Hollis had walked the 20 feet from the airport bar to the edge of the jet bridge and was now standing professional, her phone steady, filming the whole thing in 4K. And, sir, I want you to hear this part most of all, because this is the part that is about you personally. Not about me, not about my family, not about this morning. 3 days from now, you are going to stand in a courtroom in Washington, D.C., in front of 12 citizens of this country, and you are going to ask them to believe that you are a good man who was caught up in a paperwork disagreement with the Securities and Exchange Commission. That was your entire defense strategy. I know. I read the trial brief last night. I pulled it off Pacer for extra reading. It is the brief you just poured coffee on. Ashford made a small sound. Not a word. A sound. Sir, you just handed the Department of Justice a hate crime video. You handed it to them yourself, with a caption. And you delivered it to the prosecution by Instagram at 8:16 this morning Mountain Time. For the rest of your life, sir, no jury in this country is ever going to believe you are a good man caught up in a paperwork disagreement. Not one jury. Not ever. Elijah paused. He let the whole concourse hear it. You are not going to be acquitted anyway, sir. The SEC had you on evidence. But you were going to get 3 or 4 years, and you were going to serve it in a low-security facility in West Virginia, and your wife was going to keep your last name. You were going to walk out of prison in your late 50s with most of your money still in trust, and your daughter was still going to invite you to Thanksgiving. Stop. Sir, I am not going to stop. Ashford's hand was still on the terminal column. He looked like he was trying very hard not to sit down on the floor of the concourse. You were going to have a life after this case. A smaller life. A quieter life. But a life. And this morning, over a coffee you did not want to pay for, over a seat you did not like me sitting in, over a word your great-grandfather probably taught your grandfather who taught your father who taught you, sir. This morning, you threw that life away, and the worst part is the worst part. Mr. Ashford, is that you will spend the next 20 years in a cell trying to understand what you traded for that 1 cup of coffee. And you will never understand it, because men like you never do. He turned. Back to Kessler. Officer, am I free to go? Kessler's voice, when it came out, was the voice of a man who had aged 7 years in the last 11 minutes. Yes. Yes, Mr. Morgan, you are free to go. I would like my phone, my laptop, my notebook, my bag, every item, now. Please. Yes, sir. Briggs. Briggs moved fast, smooth, professionally. He scooped the pile of items off the carpet. He handed Elijah the phone first, then the laptop, then the notebook, then the book, then the filing, then the wallet, then the backpack. He even zipped it up for him. He handed it to Elijah with both hands, the way a soldier hands off a flag. Kessler could not look at him. Elijah slung the backpack over his shoulder. He slid the small laminated card which Kessler silently held out to him back behind his Howard University ID in his wallet. He slid the wallet back into his hoodie pocket. He took a long breath. He turned. He started walking down the concourse, toward the exit, toward the arrivals curb, toward his mother. 30 feet down the terminal, he stopped. He turned one last time to face Preston Ashford, who was still leaning against the terminal column. And he said in a voice that carried all the way back up the concourse to the jet bridge, clean enough to be picked up by every single phone still recording in that concourse, calm enough to be the last sentence of any prosecution's closing argument. You were right about one thing, sir. Ashford did not look up. People like me do not belong in the back. Ashford did not move. We belong wherever the law says we belong. And right now, sir, that is in front of it. He turned. He walked away. Nora Hollis lowered her phone 1 inch. She already had her headline. Back on the jet bridge, Tyler Briggs looked at Raymond Kessler and, for the first time in the 3 years they had been partners, did not recognize him. 14 minutes later. The arrivals curb at Reagan National Airport. A black sedan slid up to the pickup lane and stopped. The driver's side door opened. Out stepped Judge Celeste Morgan. No robe, no briefcase, no law clerk, no entourage, just jeans. A gray cashmere sweater. Sneakers. Her hair in a short natural, the same way she had worn it in the CVS 8 years ago, the same way she had worn it the day she had been confirmed by the Senate. A mother's face. She scanned the curb. She saw him. She walked fast. Not running, fast. Stopped 2 steps away. Did not grab him. Did not hug him. Not yet. She checked him first. The way mothers check. Her eyes went to his chest. The dark stain, the crusted edges, the places the fabric had dried to his skin. Her eyes went to his arms, his hands, his face, his eyes. "Are you burned, baby? Let me see." "A little." "I'm okay, Mom. Nothing serious. 2nd degree in 2 spots at most. I will get it seen to." "I am okay." She studied his face for 1 more second, and then she pulled him in. Long, tight. He was 6'1". She was 5'4". He rested his chin on the top of her head, closed his eyes for the first time in 3.5 hours. 30 feet away, Nora Hollis lifted her camera, took 1 photograph, just 1. A federal judge in a gray sweater and sneakers holding her 20-year-old son on an airport curb. His shirt still brown with coffee, the sky behind them overcast, the flag on the pole beside the doors hanging limp. That photograph in 48 hours would be on the front page of 3 newspapers. In 72 hours, it would be on the home page of every major site. In 6 months, it would hang framed in a gallery at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. Nora Hollis filed the shot and lowered her camera, gave the mother and son a full 10 seconds of privacy. Even she could read a room. Inside the terminal, Preston Kingsley Ashford III was having the worst 20 minutes of his life. Officer Tyler Briggs had kept him sitting on a metal bench near gate B12, pending a supervisor. Ashford's phone kept buzzing in his jacket pocket. He did not answer it. His lawyer had called 5 times. His wife had called twice. His daughter had called once. When he saw Judge Morgan walking through the sliding doors of the terminal holding her son's hand like he was 7 years old. He stood up from the bench. He fumbled into his inside jacket pocket. Out came a checkbook, a genuine leather-bound old-school personal checkbook. He had not used it in 3 years. He had grabbed it that morning out of a drawer without thinking the way rich men grab the wrong thing in a panic. He walked toward Judge Morgan with the checkbook already open, a pen in his other hand. "Your Honor, please, let me make this right. The shirt, the laptop, your son's discomfort, whatever he needs, whatever you need. Please, name a number. I will write it right now." Judge Celeste Morgan stopped walking. She looked at the checkbook. She looked at Preston Ashford. She did not let go of her son's hand. "Mr. Ashford." Her voice was if anything colder than it had been on the JetBridge phone call. "You have just attempted to bribe a sitting federal judge in a federal airport terminal, in front of at least 13 witnesses, in front of an active MWAA officer, in front of a freelance journalist who has been filming since the word boy was used in the cabin of your flight." She nodded once across the concourse at Nora Hollis. Nora Hollis, to her credit, nodded back. "Officer Briggs, please note the time. That is an additional federal offense under 18 U.S.C. Section 201. I would also like it entered into whatever report you are filing that you witnessed Mr. Ashford personally approach me with an open checkbook and a pen in hand." "Yes, Your Honor." Preston Ashford's hand was shaking so badly that he dropped the pen. "Your Honor, I did not. I was not. I was just trying to." "Put the checkbook away, Mr. Ashford." "Your Honor." "Put it away, sir. You have dug the hole deep enough this morning." He closed the checkbook. Slowly. His hands would not stop shaking. By now, Lieutenant Greta Bishop, the MWAA supervisor, had arrived at a near run. 53 years old, 27 years on the force, first female watch commander in MWAA history. She had seen the JetBridge live stream on her phone during her drive over. She had already made 3 phone calls. She stopped in front of Judge Morgan, removed her hat, held it in one hand. "Your Honor, I am deeply sorry for what has happened to your son this morning on my watch. I have reviewed body cam footage from both officers. Officer Kessler is about to be relieved of duty. I will have a formal statement for your attorney before close of business. If you would prefer to handle your son's evaluation at Howard University Hospital rather than our in-airport clinic, I completely understand. An MWAA vehicle is available at your discretion." Judge Morgan studied her face. "Thank you, Lieutenant. Howard University. My son will be seen there. We will walk." "Yes, Your Honor." Lieutenant Bishop turned, walked directly to Officer Raymond Kessler, who was still standing on the jet bridge by himself where Briggs had left him 10 minutes earlier. "Officer Kessler." "Lieutenant." "Hand me your badge." Kessler looked at her. 19 years. His whole adult life, his wife, 2 kids in community college, a pension he had 3 years left to vest. He opened his mouth, closed it. He unclipped the badge from his uniform shirt. Slowly, like a man unbuttoning his own shroud, handed it over. "Hand me your service weapon." He unclipped the holster, slid the pistol out, cleared the chamber one-handed automatically the way he had been trained to clear it for 19 years. Handed it to her butt first. "You are relieved of duty as of this moment. You are placed on administrative leave pending internal affairs investigation and pending a federal civil rights investigation by the Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division. Do you understand?" "Yes, Lieutenant." "You will be escorted out of this terminal by Sergeant Ramos. Do not speak to any passenger, any witness, or any member of the press between this moment and the moment you reach the parking deck. Do you understand?" "Yes, Lieutenant." 19 feet away, Nora Hollis took another picture. That one, Kessler handing a badge to Lieutenant Bishop with a defeated slump in his shoulders, would also run on the front page. Kessler walked away. The rest of it happened fast. By 11:40 a.m., the passenger video from Marisol Vega, the jet bridge video from Nora Hollis, and Elijah's own phone audio recording were all circulating on 3 major networks. The footage did not need context. The footage was the context. Donovan Blake, the purser, was placed on immediate unpaid suspension at 11:41. Bethany Tran, the flight attendant, was placed on immediate unpaid suspension at 11:43. Both would be terminated by close of business. Neither would work for a major airline again. At 12:15 p.m., airline CEO Margaret Halloran, 59 years old, former corporate attorney, former mother of a son who had been jumped at a rest stop outside Richmond in 1998, and who had told her when she got the CEO job that he did not want her company to be the kind of company where the opposite happened to somebody else's son, walked into the corporate press room and gave a 3-minute statement. She named Elijah Morgan with the family's written consent by first and last name. She called the conduct indefensible. She pledged $30 million in funding to civil rights legal aid organizations. She announced mandatory bias training for every gate agent, flight attendant, and purser in the company to be completed within 60 days, no exceptions, no grandfather clauses for tenure. She announced a board-level review of every single passenger complaint that had been quietly settled by the airline over the prior 3 years. Then she walked off the stage and went back to her office, closed the door, and cried for a total of 4 minutes. The stock dropped 9% in 3 trading days. Outside the airline corporate headquarters at the arrivals curb at Reagan National, as Judge Morgan and Elijah finally started walking back toward the sedan, an older Latina woman in a TSA uniform stepped quietly out from behind a concrete pillar. Her name was Rosa Delgado. She had been on a break. She had walked across the terminal specifically to find Elijah. She was holding a folded hooded sweatshirt from an airport gift shop. The price tag was still dangling from the sleeve. She had paid for it herself, $32.99. She was a TSA officer. That was not nothing. She pressed the sweatshirt gently into Elijah's hands. "Baby, you should not be cold on top of everything else today." Elijah's eyes filled for the first time all morning. Not from the assault, not from the officers, not from the jet bridge. From this. From a stranger who had chosen kindness when 29 people on an airplane had chosen silence. Judge Morgan took Rosa Delgado's hand, held it for a long second. They did not exchange names. They did not need to. One long look. One woman to another. Across whatever it is that women of color in this country carry and pass back and forth in airports and schools and grocery stores and hospital waiting rooms every single day of their lives. "Thank you, sister. You take care of your boy." "I will." He did good. He did. The two women held each other's hands for another 2 seconds. Then Rosa Delgado turned, walked back to her checkpoint. Elijah slid the new hoodie on over the stained one. He and his mother walked to the car. 3 weeks later. Judge Celeste Morgan's chambers, 4th floor of the E. Barrett Prettyman Federal Courthouse, Washington, D.C. It was a Thursday afternoon. Her law clerk, a young woman named Priya Malhotra, who had graduated from Yale Law 11 months earlier, walked in with the mail. Most of it was routine: motions, briefs, a bar association newsletter, a birthday card from Judge Morgan's goddaughter. At the bottom of the stack was a plain white 9x12 envelope, no return address, stamped, hand-addressed in careful cursive, postmarked Tulsa, Oklahoma. Inside was a single sheet of ivory stationery and a small black USB flash drive taped to the paper with a single piece of clear tape. The letter was typed, double-spaced, unsigned at the bottom except for a single line of handwritten cursive. Judge Morgan read it once straight through. Then she read it again. Then she put down the letter carefully on her desk, stood up, walked over to her office door, closed it, walked back, sat down, read the letter a 3rd time. Your Honor, my name is Diane Whitaker. I am 68 years old. I am retired. I worked for 31 years as a senior flight scheduling supervisor for the airline whose name I am sure you no longer wish to hear. I am writing you because I watched your son on the news 3 weeks ago. I have watched the footage probably 30 times since then. I watch it the way other people watch sermons. I cannot stop. Your Honor, your son was not the first. By my private count, which I started keeping in February of 2014, he was the 74th. There is an internal flag in our scheduling system. 3 characters, a dash, a 7. I will not write it out in full in this letter because I do not want to embarrass the airline more than they are about to be embarrassed by the drive I am enclosing. Senior management will know exactly which flag I mean. Every crew member who ever worked a first-class cabin for that airline will also know exactly which flag I mean. That flag was never in the written employee manual. It was taught in the hallway. It was taught between shifts in the crew lounge in Dallas, in the crew lounge in Atlanta. It was taught with a wink. It was taught by pursers to new flight attendants on their first long haul. It was taught most of all by 3 regional vice presidents, all of whom are still at the company and whose names are on the drive I am enclosing. The flag let crew members quietly reseat, downgrade, or report passengers whose appearance in the crew member's judgment did not match the cabin they had paid for. Nearly every single passenger who was flagged in the 11 years I was tracking this was a passenger of color. I kept a private log, Your Honor. I kept it on a personal external drive that I never plugged into any airline computer. I kept it for 11 years. I have flight numbers, I have dates, I have crew names. I have passenger initials to protect the passengers, but with enough detail that any half-decent investigator will be able to find them. I have 8 of the actual complaint emails the passengers sent and the ones the airline quietly settled or quietly ignored. I have 3 internal training session audio files from 2016, 2019, and 2022 in which the flag was taught out loud by name in a room full of flight attendants. I know I should have sent this drive 10 years ago. I was afraid of losing my pension. I retired in 2024. My pension has been vested for 2 years. There is nothing they can take from me anymore. I am more ashamed of the 73 people I did not speak up for, Your Honor, than I am afraid of the attention this letter may bring to me. My husband died in 2021. My children are grown. I am ready. Please do with the drive whatever your son's name deserves. Forgive me for being one of the silent ones. With respect, Diane Whitaker. At the bottom of the page in blue ink in handwriting that was shakier than the typed letter above it, she had written one more line. Tell your boy his grandfather would have been proud. Judge Celeste Morgan sat at her desk for a long time. She did not cry. Judge Celeste Morgan did not cry at her desk. She had made a rule about that the first week she had been sworn in, but she put her hand on the letter and she kept it there for a long time. Then she picked up the flash drive. She picked up her phone. She called the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division directly on a line she had not used in 7 years. She asked for the deputy chief. The deputy chief, a man named Martin Hollifield, picked up on the second ring. Marty. Judge. I am about to messenger you a flash drive. I need you to clear your afternoon. Judge. Why? My son was not the first. By her count, he was the 74th. The line was quiet for a moment. Judge. Send the drive. Within 6 weeks, the airline was facing a federal investigation under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. A class action was filed on behalf of all 73 passengers of color Diane Whitaker had logged. 73 names that had been hiding in a scheduling system for 11 years. 73 people who had thought they were alone, who had thought they were crazy, who had thought nobody was listening. By year's end, the airline's initial $30 million pledge had become a $410 million settlement. 3 regional vice presidents were named in the Department of Justice consent decree. All 3 resigned within 4 months. Margaret Halloran kept her job. She had done the right thing fast in public on day 1. The board considered replacing her. The board ultimately did not. She spent the next 2 years personally overseeing the retraining. She retired in her own time 3 years later on her own terms. What Preston Ashford had done to Elijah Morgan in Seat 2A was not an exception. It was a practice, a hallway teaching, an unwritten code passed down for 11 years with a wink. The only thing Preston Ashford had done wrong from that quiet code's point of view was pick the one 20-year-old in America whose mother could see the whole machine. 8 months later. Federal Courthouse, Washington, D.C. Preston Kingsley. Ashford III sat at the defense table in a suit that did not fit him right anymore. He had lost weight. His hair had gone gray at the temples. He was 53 years old. He was charged with 3 federal crimes. Count 1, assault resulting in bodily injury. The second-degree burns on Elijah Morgan's chest had been photographed and documented the same afternoon by a Howard University hospital physician. Count 2, federal hate crime enhancement, 18, U.S. Code Section 249. The prosecution's evidence included the word boy used twice on Elijah's audio recording, the phrase your kind used twice, and Exhibit 4, the Instagram story Ashford had filmed of his own victim and posted with a laughing caption at 8:16 a.m. Mountain Time from Seat 2C. Count 3, attempted bribery of a federal judicial officer, 18 U.S. Code Section 201. The checkbook moment on the concourse had been captured by 4 separate phones, including Nora Hollis's professional-grade footage. The audio was clean, the video was clean, the context was clean. The lead prosecutor was Assistant United States Attorney Alejandra Rivas, 36 years old, daughter of a civil rights paralegal who had worked in the 1990s alongside a young Celeste Morgan at the same D.C. nonprofit. Alejandra had been preparing for a case like this her entire career, and the case had finally come to her. Her opening statement took 24 minutes. Her closing took 11. She played Elijah's phone audio. She played Marisol Vega's 90 minutes of 4K. She played the Jet Bridge video. She played Exhibit 4, the Instagram post, 3 times. Preston Ashford took the stand against his attorney's advice. He tried to claim the coffee pour had been a turbulence accident. Also, Rivas played Marisol Vega's video frame by frame at quarter speed. The jury watched Ashford's wrist tilt deliberately for 3 full seconds. They watched him set the empty mug down. They watched him brush his palms together. They watched him pull out the $50 bill. In her closing AUSA, Rivas stood in front of the jury and held up one word on a piece of paper. Boy. She let it sit there for a long second. Ladies and gentlemen, in 1947, that word was used by a white landlord against a black tenant in a Mississippi courtroom. In 1963, that word was used by a sheriff against a 17-year-old boy carrying groceries to his mother in Alabama. In 2026, that word was used by a billionaire against a college student reading a book on an airplane. The word has not changed. What it means has not changed. And what it deserves from a jury of American citizens has not changed either. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They returned guilty on all 3 counts. Sentencing came 3 months later. 14 years for the assault and the hate crime enhancement consecutive. 6 years for the bribery consecutive. 12 years for the securities fraud concurrent. Total, 20 years. No parole eligibility for 15. $410 million in restitution and forfeiture. His wife filed for divorce the week of the verdict. His board voted him out of Ashford Capital the morning after. The firm was renamed Harborline Partners by the end of the quarter. Officer Raymond Kessler pled guilty to federal civil rights violation under 18 U.S. Code Section 242. 3 years federal custody. Permanent law enforcement decertification. Elijah Morgan did not testify. Not once. His recording, Marisol's video, the jet bridge footage, his physician's report, they spoke for him. He sat in the front row of the courtroom beside his mother in a navy suit she had bought him for his 21st birthday. He did not smile when the verdict was read. He closed his eyes. One slow breath. He opened them. One spring morning, 1 year after the coffee, Elijah Morgan walked to class across Howard's campus in a crisp white button-up his mother had bought him by the stack. It had become a quiet joke between them. In his wallet, tucked behind a new Howard University ID, was the same small laminated card he had carried onto that flight. You are calm. You are loved. You belong. He did not need to read it anymore. He was it. The Morgan Dignity Fund, which his mother quietly launched that spring and refused to sit on the board of, opened its first case file in April. By Christmas, it had taken 286 more. Not one of those families could have afforded a lawyer the day their story started. Every single one of them had a lawyer by the end of the week. That is what Elijah's morning bought with a ruined shirt and a refused $50 bill. And somewhere in a federal prison in Pennsylvania, a man who once owned 2 homes and a yacht wakes up every morning at 5:40 a.m. He does not yet understand what the coffee he poured that morning actually cost him. The coffee was not the punishment. The coffee was just the receipt. Man. I have been sitting with this story for 3 days trying to figure out what to say at the end. And here is what I keep coming back to. Elijah was 20 years old. 20. And he did something most of us could not do at 40. He refused to argue with a story somebody else was trying to write about him. He just kept the receipts. So my advice tonight, know your name, know your rights, document everything. The law is slow, but the law reads receipts. Subscribe, share this with somebody who needs it, and I will see you in the next one.